All right, Hailey, Chisholm, fellow Westwood and Fort McMurray survivor. Very nice to
Yeah.
have you on today.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Of course. So, you and I are both fairly new to the teaching profession. And one of the first things that I kind of always ask people, because I know you're also going to be going back to Alberta soon, likely trying to teach back there. And almost everywhere you look online, you just hear stories of these dumpster fires over everywhere. And so, my question is, why should someone who's 18 years old look at the education field and say, I want to go into that?
you know, that's it's kind of a loaded question, right? Just like you kind of said there, it's funny that that's your first question because I grew up around the field of education in a more personal way than I guess just being a student myself. My mom is an educational assistant, so she's been in schools for over 30 years. When I would tag along to volunteering events or just in the classroom with her some days, her teacher friends would kind of ask me, well, what are you thinking of doing when you get older? What career do you want to go into? And, I was young and excited and I would be like teaching and
Yeah.
would all get the same look in their eye and just be like, run. They would all have the same,
The look always comes.
essentially, not recommending it. Yeah. Then back then I would be like, well, who doesn't want to be paid in like coffee mugs that say they're the best teacher ever? Like, I remember my mom would come home on like random holidays like Valentine's Day, and she would have gifts like perfumes and chocolates, and she was being treated like a celebrity. I was like, who wouldn't
Yeah.
want that? But now with some experience, I kind of do understand what those teachers.
Mr. Clark After Dark is brought to you by Luxy. That's Luxy. Luxy is the standard for modern dating as it gives you a greater understanding of any potential match's intentions and background before you make your move. Swiping endlessly in other dating apps can be exhausting and often leave you with only the leftovers in your dating pool. Luxy is an exclusive platform with just a 10 to 15% acceptance rate, as well as a profile and income verification feature so you can be confident you're only connecting with those who meet your high standards. The community guidelines emphasize safety, trust, and equality by strictly prohibiting scams, explicit content, and harassment. 2025 is your year to stop settling. With Luxy, there is no luck involved, just real connections with people who truly match what it is you are looking for. Download the Luxy app today to see if you qualify for a better chance at finding the right person for you. And now, back to the show. Mr. Clark After Dark is brought to you by Lean Fit Supplements. Teachers, you give everything to your students, your time, your energy, and even your sanity. But who is fueling you? Lean Fit is here to help you stay energized, focused, and feeling your best, whether you're powering through lesson plans or just surviving recess. From clean protein powders to daily wellness boosters and my personal favorite, the vanilla protein, Lean Fit has your back. Click the link in the description to get 25% off your first order today. Yes. What gets the things that get baked into the look. Yeah. No, my wife taught kindergarten in Fort McMurray as well, and like we would kind of always joke that from January to March and from like July to October, all of our Starbucks was covered. Like we
Yeah.
got so many gifts. She got so many gift cards for Christmas with her morning and afternoon kindergarten class and like end of year stuff. That was always like it's definitely we don't go into teaching for the gift card. That's not what we're saying. But I definitely think you definitely build a cool community and you quickly realize like how many people you're actually teaching in the run of 2 and 3 years. I mean, you're dealing with 1,000 families probably at that point if you're teaching junior high or high school, or even 1,500 families in the case of Fort McMurray in Alberta, and those class sizes keep getting bigger and bigger. And
Exactly.
so I guess for you, I kind of like talking to people in kind of like my own zone of education, I guess, if you will, of who are still kind of new to it. I guess like maybe once you decide to go into it, you study it and you start. Like, what is maybe one thing that you learned, you unfortunately learned about education, and one thing that you started to enjoy about it? Like, what was kind of one realization where you're like, you know what, this might not be for me because of this, or this is for me because of this?
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think Like, my honest take is, if you care, like, you have to care more about impact than credit. Definitely in the field of education, it's easier said than done, but your work and extra hours won't always be celebrated or noticed, even. I think it's really less about curriculum now. Not that that's not very important, but it's a
Mhm.
lot about connection these days. And that takes a lot out of you, especially when, you're in front of 20, 30 kids and they all need to have an individual and different type of connection with you in order to learn. You'll spend more time with these students than some of their own family members at times. And there's always going to be things left on your to-do list that are undone. I struggled a lot with that at the start because I really was trying to do all these things at once and never feeling fully satisfied with it. But if you're still going to show up and choose your students every day, I think that you're probably in the right place. If that kind of work excites you more than it scares you, then yeah, you're probably in the
Yeah,
right.
you'll always have people to talk to. That's one thing. As a self-prescribed yapper myself, I feel like walking in every day, I can always try to chat with anyone all the time, and I do like, you kind of like the feel. I always kind of enjoyed the feeling of, like, even if they don't need me, like, we're still gonna have good conversations, we're still gonna have fun, and that, like, kind of connection with the kids was always definitely one of the better parts for it. I think one thing I definitely realized was that the to-do list, not even that it never stops, it's like, I remember the great Sheldon Dahl. I'm not sure if you worked with him at McTavish or not, but he's a legend in his own right. But he said some days, like, Google Classroom is fully up to date, all your marks are in, and your plan for the next day in life is good. And then the next day or the next week, all three of those are completely not finished. They're nowhere near being finished, and that's kind of the unfortunate reality that comes with the, it's kind of like never ending workload, but there's just always things you can be doing. And I think even
Yeah,
for myself, like, it's easy to exhaust yourself and play perfectionist and be like, there's so much I can be doing all the time. So now I have to be involved in everything and work all the time, where you can kind of put
yeah.
that pressure on yourself.
You have to
Um,
prioritize for sure, and it's hard to figure out what to prioritize sometimes, even though it seems like it should be simple.
yeah. I know it always kind of starts like, it should be PLPs and then your like lesson plan for the week and what your assessment is, and then it turns into 38 other things. And this person called this person a poo poo head and all that stuff. But yeah, it's the way it goes, especially in the jungles of junior high.
Yes.
And so, as you kind of started getting into teaching for yourself, I guess first off, like, where did you graduate from, and what is kind of your perspective on the preparation of these post-secondary systems and actually preparing people for the classroom?
So I graduated from the University of Alberta's Campus Saint Jean. So I did my degree in French. And what I found interesting about the program is that they do the practicum sequence a little bit differently than I heard they do at other campuses. So basically, I shouldn't say only, but I got two practicum placements that were each 8 weeks long. And that was kind of my exposure to the classroom. Like, there was that was in the fourth year. There was a pre, like, when you go once a week to the
Yeah,
classroom
I
and
never
when
actually
you
did the once a week.
know. Okay, so yeah, it's interesting how it works differently.
Yeah, because we
Um,
did a 5 week and a 9 week. So I did
okay,
secondary ed at U of A as well, but it was like a 5 week in your, like, I did the after degree, so it was kind of the, like, first year of the after degree, which is like the third year, and then the fourth year, which is the last year. We did a 9 week to finish off.
okay, yeah. So I'm not even sure if it adds up to be this same amount of
It's probably,
time in the
seems like you
end,
did
but
more, but I mean that's not a bad thing.
I'm assuming it kind of adds up somewhat
Yeah.
similarly. I mean, I'd hope that teachers are being taught in the same, you know, sort of ways. But I did my first practicum in a kindergarten class, so that was an AM and PM, and there was 50 students total. And then my second one, I actually did in Fort McMurray, and it was a 5-6 split. So Those two experiences were very different for me. Student teaching is just, it's something else, you know? I don't like,
It really is its own thing.
I feel like I became a different person when I was student teaching, and then like I'll never be that person. And it only lasted for when I was student teaching. It was just every little stressor felt like the end of the world. Like it was so much pressure. And I university classes don't really, set you up for the truth, which is, your classroom's going to smell weird, the lesson's going to flop, some kid is going to be throwing up on you all at the same time, and that's still
Yeah.
called learning. I think that
Yeah.
students need to know that.
That's very wise. I like that. All of these things are still called learning.
Exactly.
And well, I remember, so I taught, and I'm assuming if you actually, because I guess our friend Mr. Hamilton is a nomad now. I don't think he has his own room,
He is a bit
but
of
it was it. He is just a nomadic guy.
a
But from the esports lab to peak hockey. But anyway, I won't talk anymore about Jason here. But I think it was in Erica Cook's old rooms, like the third room down in the first hallway in junior high at Cole McTavish. And I did my second practicum there.
Okay.
And I had taught during COVID in my first practicum at Westwood. And it was kind of just a poop show, only because it was literally right in the middle of the, I would say, like, revolving door of like, we're in school, we're out of school, we're in school, we're out of school for like COVID, like right at the peak of it. And then at
You,
McTavish, I believe we were like the full 45 days of my practicum, we were in the classroom. But anyway, I remember my first day, it was kind of like my first formal presentation lesson. I mean, I had talked for about 90 minutes in the junior high block at Westwood with the Aztecs ones, and I knew those kids couldn't handle 90 minutes of that. But I just remember I planned, I don't even know. I probably put like 4 or 5 hours into this like 60-minute lesson, and I was just combing through it with like every single letter and word and spacing and everything. And like 8 minutes in, these kids are just like, they're not even remotely there for it whatsoever. So I think that was probably one, again, that's still called learning. But I do very much understand what you're saying about like this pressure that is, I think imposter syndrome is the wrong word for it. I've talked about that too many times on this podcast, but it's like, I don't know if it's maybe like our teachers were all, it seemed so effortless when they did it. Like if that's
yeah,
something that we didn't realize they were doing, and like we're putting so much effort in and it's not kind of going exactly how we planned. So I guess in that regard, kind of where I wanted to go with this question is that now in New Brunswick, it's actually facing a very severe teacher shortage as well. Apparently, right now they're kind of actually slashing about like 30 or more district positions to actually funnel people back into the classroom because they have like that much of a need. But a lot of education students are also now kind of getting paid to do their practicum
really.
it's because they're actually just teaching a class and they're just giving it as university credit.
Exactly. Okay.
Yes, but they don't have a mentor teacher though. So I guess my question for you is, how influential and valuable was that mentorship experience during the 16 weeks that you had, that you think other teachers that won't have that are missing out on? Mr. Clark After Dark is also brought to you by leverageassistance.com. What could you do if you had a free full-time personal employee for your small business for a whole month? Whether you're an education consultant, solopreneur, or just building an ed tech startup, or have a separate small business of your own, you understand how a great idea can turn into a litter of monotonous tasks. Creating content, managing clients, pitching new work, and then somehow still answering emails is just too much for one person. That is where Leverage Assistance comes into play. They give you highly vetted, full-time business operations specialists for just $3,000 a month with no hidden fees. That's less than a third of the cost of hiring one full-time employee to do anything that you need to customize to your business needs. Each assistant is put through a 12-hour vetting process with reference checks, AI tools training, and a behavioral fit assessment. You're not just hiring help, you're gaining a strategic partner. Try it for free at leverageassistance.com. That's leverageassistance.com in the description below. Focus on your zone of genius and let them handle the rest.
Honestly, that's a really good question. I guess a lot of things are changing in the education system, which means a lot of things have to change in the way that we're educating teachers. But that being said, I think that both of my mentor teachers were really anchors for me. And, completely different classrooms in two different cities. But what I learned from them was truly invaluable. I mean, these are experienced teachers that are, some people have more positive experiences than others, but at the end of the day, that mentor is still offering you a lot of their guidance. And of course, you know, each teacher has a different way of teaching, but I think that it's a very unique and valuable experience to be taught in the perspective of another teacher that has that, like, the years that they've taught really to go off of, and like in different grades and such. I think that you kind of need this extra support as well, not just in terms of teaching, but just in terms of all of the emotions that go into it as well. I mean, when you're finishing up a teaching degree and maybe you're finishing university, it doesn't matter, if you're 18 or you're in your 40s, there's a big change that's coming into your life. If you do decide to, pursue your own classroom and teaching as a career. And I think that it's important to have like strong people in your corner to support you in that and support you even if you choose not to do that. I think that taking away mentor teachers could definitely impact how these new generation of teachers really, I guess, solidify their knowledge.
And so you had two mentor teachers, because I know, like, even during my second one, I really wanted to teach high school. So I was in a junior high placement, but I went to go try and teach with shout out Kate Gadzala in her class for a bit.
Who was my social studies teacher in high school?
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so I guess I learned from the best with the legendary Gadzala, and I shared a wall with her for a year and miss her dearly and miss my McTavish family dearly. But what do you think were the different strengths of your mentor teachers, like in different ways? Like, what was different about them in like a good way that you felt like you took parts from both of them?
That's a good question. Let me think. I think that my first mentor teacher was kind of like, she was very real with me about like the expectations that were going to be put onto me, not just, by admin and parents and but like students and just like really what society thinks of teachers. I think that she didn't sugarcoat anything. And even in my own teaching practices, she would stop like the lesson and say, and like, add her own thing to kind of help or redirect or, kind of suggest things, which like at the time, maybe it was a little frustrating because it would like kind of, you kind of lose that groove. But then looking back,
You're
it's
getting in
like,
your own head.
exactly, exactly. But she was really just looking out for my best interest, and it taught me a lot too. And in comparison to my second practicum teacher, she really let me do my own thing, which was great. I felt like I had a lot of independence, and because it was a split class, I kind of took over one grade at a time and she would work on the other grade, and we kind of collaborated a little bit more than in my first practicum. And I mean, she was just as real with me too about, the dynamics of a school and your coworkers and this and that. But we definitely collaborated a lot more as, I guess, peers. She wasn't, she was a great mentor teacher, and I'm really grateful for both of their supports.
I remember in my second practicum, it was the first time that I had. No, I guess I taught social studies in junior high in grade 8 for the first one, but this was the second time around. I was going to teach grade 9. So junior high is in grade 9, and it runs like they go into high school there. But anyway, it was grade 9. And I remember looking at the textbook and like, I think it also, you're trying to prove that you're smart. Like,
Yes.
I think that's like what you're trying to do. So I was like, oh, I'm a poli sci major. Like, I'm going to crush this. And I remember like, had this like 18-day like plan of like these like intricate things about government systems, and my teacher was like, you can't do that. Like these kids you're gonna lose them. They don't know what you're talking about. And so I think for me, the overemphasis on trying to like flood them with information just because you can, I think was
Yes.
probably one of like the greatest things that, like, again, like we're all university educated, like we've done things, we have interests that you probably learn things about. But I do think that focusing on what is necessary and understanding, like they can't actually learn that much in a week. Like I learned how alarming it was of like, you can maybe get like 3 terms in a week. Like we're not going that much deeper here.
Yeah.
Did you kind of have a similar experience there?
Yeah, I feel like we all have our Roman Empire lesson that we just really wanted to deliver. We're like,
It's like they will
truly,
know about Julius Caesar after this.
it's like you're gonna sit down, you're gonna listen.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, I'll carry on anyway. I know
Yeah.
that nobody's listening, but I put in the work. No, I'm just but
I don't care if you don't care about 1880s immigration to Canada, you're going to listen.
exactly. But yeah, no, and that age group too, like I said, I was teaching grade 8 math and science, and it's like they want to be anywhere but there, truly.
Oh, yeah.
So you really
Yeah,
have to
because
get creative.
social you can kind of get away with because like you're telling stories and you can kind of be a bit more performative, but like you're not acting out like I wouldn't even know what's in grade 9 science, like the water cycle. I don't know. Like clearly, I don't teach science. I have no idea what's in the grade 9 curriculum. Don't ask me. But as you've been in teaching, and I really like that you've been doing some subbing, you're doing some contract work, like you're not like kind of just going in like full, not that you're not going in fully right away, but like you're really getting a great experience of experiencing other teachers and schools and different
Yeah,
dynamics before kind of getting into that fully. And I do
yeah,
think like in Fort Mac, I was a TAS for a couple of years before, because I was doing my ed degree online during COVID, so I got to sub like every day. And I think
right.
that was the most like invaluable experience of just learning, one, kind of where you actually want to be, and two, like I almost feel like it's not talked about enough, but like the health, I'm gonna say barometer, that might be the wrong word, I don't know, the temperature of a school, like, and I promise I'm not trying to bring some boring PD fact in, like, but you can kind of, I kind of felt that like walking into a building, like you kind of know.
You do
Like the
know.
second you walk in and you're like, okay, something's going on here. That's not great, or something is awesome here.
Exactly.
And like, I guess, how would you help me further define, I guess, what those differences are? Like, what is when you walk into a school and you're like, I just feel heavy here, versus like, you know what, the sun's shining here. What is that in your experience?
That's a really good question. I didn't mention this, but I actually taught on a temporary contract just after or a probationary contract, sorry, a temporary
Mhm.
contract when I first graduated in grade 1, and then I took on a probationary contract for the following year in grade 2. And my experience there in that classroom kind of led me to making the decision of, I don't want my teaching career to necessarily be linear right now. I want to take the time to really figure out where I want to be, what kind of teacher I want to be, what grade I want to work with, what subjects. There's so many things that go into deciding, like where your niche, I guess, where you
Yeah.
want to be. And so, yeah, you're right. I think that every school is completely different, different admin teams, different staffs, different students, different parent communities. And I've subbed at every school, in every public school in up in Fort Mac, except for Westwood, actually.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
at past high school, but no, just kidding.
Yeah. No. Stay away.
And
No, I'm just kidding.
I think that, being under the same school board, the schools hold obviously a lot of the same values and are
Mhm.
directed by a lot of the same people,
Doing what's
but they
best for
aren't
kids. We
exact
definitely never made fun of that slogan. Definitely not.
21st century learner.
Yeah.
but
Sure.
but it's like it feels a little outdated. So basically, I guess to get back to the topic, I think that even though they share that same school board, that I got a different, I guess, vibe. I feel like that word is
Mhm.
overused, but from
I
each
know.
school.
But it works so well.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess like I think that, you know what, staff room dynamics have a lot to do with how the school overall is ranked for me. I think that in some schools, you know, there's a lot of divide between staff members. And, you know, sometimes like certain groups, like French teachers or English teachers or educational assistants and teachers or admin and teachers. And that was something that really deeply like troubled me, I guess, in some of the school because it's we're all working together under the same direction, working towards the same goals for the same students. How come, you know, we can't all sit around the big table? You know, I'm not throwing shade to McTavish.
No. Oh, actually, it
I
was
love
funny
it.
'cause I know, yeah, a lot of schools have a lot of big tables. I know, but I found it funny too that because like I probably even upon reflection, I think I had an unhealthy relationship with like not that my lessons were perfect or like not even that I was a good teacher by any means, but I just like I loved being in the building. I loved like I'd go in there on the weekends and I loved like I don't think I was a good coach, but I liked helping out with all the sports. I liked watching all the games, but I never went to the staff room.
Really?
And like I would go there to print stuff, but I always just ate lunch in my room. But I think that was like when I was subbing too. I was, you know what? I'd rather just eat my lunch and like go for a walk or like I'll go grab coffee. It was kind of actually a nice break, like to me. And honestly, even though I'm someone who my whole family says I like to talk, like you're talking for 6 hours a day, like with the kids already. I'm like, I need an hour to just not associate with anyone. Sometimes, especially if I had an hour, like I jokingly said to a VP once who gave me who grilled me after for saying it, but I said I would take naps in my chair for 15 minutes
Where
during
are you getting
lunchtime.
out your lunch?
Well, at McTavish, like if we had no supervision, that was the like you had, I mean, what, 32 to 12:22. That was like our 50 minutes. And so like, if I had to print something, I'd go do it. But like if I had no supervision, I would close that door, put my
Yeah.
head back, and I would set an alarm 20 minutes, like, and maybe half a dozen times a year. But that all kind of comes back to say like, I love the staff dearly, but like when you like the second, it's so easy to complain in teaching. Like it's so easy to be like, this kid is absolutely like arguably a sociopath, but like, and I get that. And I understand I've had those conversations and like I've had my best teacher friends, but I'm like, I don't know. But I do find that's not native to any particular school. I know we have a shared experience at a school, but like it's just this weird quagmire of just like adult brain rot, I guess, if you will. That seems to be the way it goes. But
That's honestly a good way to describe it. And I think at the end of the day, you know, I'm never going to be judging a teacher too harshly for doing what they got to do.
well, cause I'll jump in sometimes too. Like the odd time I go, I'm like, oh yeah, like, screw that again. It's like I don't know, but I think that's what it is. It gets so easy. Yeah, it's so easy to like hop on the bandwagon and be like, hell yeah, I'm with you, brother. Like this is what's happening.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So the teacher barometer of like, yeah, because I remember like one school I'd go into, and you kind of just, I think it's maybe like the way you're welcomed.
Yes.
Um, like I would walk into a school sometimes, and like you're kind of standing around, and people are like walking by you, and like you're a strange face in the building, so someone should probably be like at least addressing you. Like,
Yeah.
oh, like I'm here to sub for the afternoon or whatever, and then they kind of like just give you your sheet, and they're like they don't tell you where to go. I'm like, okay, cool. And you talk to
Yeah.
teachers, and they're like they don't really have time for you, and you're like, all right, cool. Like I'll just keep walking. It's all good. I didn't want to talk anyway. Yeah,
And
but
you feel like
that
you
definitely
went to
seems to be.
all over again.
Yeah, like oh, I'm a new student at school in the principal's office, just waiting to get scolded. But yeah, so and as you kind of started getting into teaching, I do think that one of the things that I've struggled with now, because I'm like a tier 2 interventionist in my new role in New Brunswick,
Oh,
it's very different kind of resource position that they, as far as I know, didn't exist in Alberta. Maybe at the elementary schools in some level, but like I miss out on a lot of the like I don't know how to teach like sounds to kids. You know what I mean? Like the phonological awareness and all those things. Like I'm like, whoa, like we do a lot of morphology work, and there's a really cool word connections program that kind of helps like the in between kids. I find that we have been doing that work with, but I guess my question for you, tell me a bit about like starting your own tutoring business. how do you go, like, what are the main things of the people you have worked with? And I'm not sure how, like, deep you are into this tutoring business since you started, but if you can share, like, what are parents most concerned about that they're coming to you with? And, like, tell me a bit about that process.
Yeah, for sure. I think that starting Haley Teaches, like any decision to put yourself out there, was one that kind of took me a while to actually act on.
Mhm.
I was asking myself those questions like, how am I going to be able to figure out what parents most need, or, what these students most need, and how am I going to be able to help them, on like just, I was offering so many different things, I guess, all different grade levels. So I was really like, well, I just want to see kind of what I can do. And I didn't necessarily have a plan of what that would look like, but I basically how I do it is I consult with the parent. Like if you book a session, or even before you book a session, if they contact me, I'll always consult with them for, 30, 40 minutes to kind of just get a feel for why they, were seeking tutoring, and if they'd ever, if their child had ever had tutoring before, and what subject areas and stuff like that, if they knew how their child best learned, just so I would kind of have a basis. And then sometimes the student will be present, sometimes they won't be. And it's kind of nice when they are, because then I can also kind of introduce myself and ask them, how are you learning at school? Things like that. I try not to
Mhm.
make it feel like it's extra school, or, like I'm kind of trying to market my
Yep.
summer school.
It's a delicate balance.
Yeah, yeah, right now. So I kind of said, like, it's not summer school. I really want to, meet you where you're, and then use my skills as a teacher to figure out how I'm going to help you in a way that's best suited to you. So, if this child like loves video games, everything video games, then you know what? They're going to get a 3-week tutoring plan that's all about learning through a video game. Having that first consult really helps me decide where I'm going to take the tutoring sessions. And yeah, I think that the thing with the tutoring business is that the product you're selling is yourself and your own skills. So, and it can definitely feel a little bit unnatural.
Mhm. Especially as teachers, 'cause we are my biggest, and probably uncontroversial, but, like, my most annoying trait of teachers is that they're too humble. Like, you'll have people who are just absolute rock stars, and you're like, "How do you do what you do?" They're like, "I just do me, man." I'm like, "No, you don't. Like, you're doing really cool things, and, like, you know what you're doing, and you have this, like, poise." And, like, as I say those words, like, we can both probably think of someone who we, like, model ourselves after as a teacher to strive for.
Yes.
But it definitely, like, again, even for myself, a constant struggle of trying to put podcast content out there, and I'm like, who am I to make a podcast and do any of these things? I think that's just, it's just a common thing that I think I would argue good teachers have, because again, you don't want to oversell yourself and then actually not end up serving those in front of you. And so how do those, like, what would you typically go into a consultation? Like, is it, are the parents usually more concerned with reading? Is it math? Like, what is typically, like, the common thread of the issue? And I guess if you don't mind sharing, like, how many students, like, roughly have you worked with, and, like, what are the kind of different struggles you've noticed in working with them?
Yeah. So I think it's definitely like reading and math, like you said, is kind of like the main concern, I guess, of a lot of the parents that I work with and a lot of the families. But also, I find that sometimes the parents just need someone to kind of, like tell about what their child is experiencing at school. And a lot of it too has to do with the social factor of school. So, how they're getting along with peers, and how they're getting along with teachers, and how they're really just developing, as kids. And they'll ask for advice on things like that. It's not necessarily just academic. When I was teaching grade 2, I had a really amazing, I don't know if you knew Kitty Cochran. She worked at Dickensfield. She's been there so,
No, I don't think
yeah.
so.
Anyway, she's amazing. And she basically helped me to kind of come up with certain behavioral plans for certain students that were at home behavioral plans, but then the reward part would come at school. So she really worked with the parents to put in place the program that she had created at home. And then if they were doing, or the wanted behavior at home, then they would get maybe a reward at school, and kind of vice versa. But anyways, so I kind of, one of the things I do in my tutoring business is I will also come up with those kinds of behavioral plans for parents that are looking for something like that. And then I kind of integrate that into, the sessions and the follow up that I do. I'm working with like around 8 families right now. So ages, my youngest is in grade 4 and the oldest is in grade 8. So mainly math, reading again, and like that behavioral kind of, confidence building as well. I want them to be able to, the student, I want them to be able to not only be, completing a homework assignment or extra school, but I want them to gain the confidence in themselves to be able to, not only know the lesson at school, but have the confidence to raise their hand to answer the teacher's question as well.
Yeah, I think building the in-school confidence, I think, is probably arguably the most underdeveloped skill, I would say. And like, I think the confidence, the confidence will lead to competence, hopefully. And with your 8 families, I'm just kind of wondering, what have you learned about? 'Cause I guess in my mind, if I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to tutor a kid who comes to me like they're in grade 5, struggling with reading, like I'll talk to the family, I'll have like some screeners or whatever that I'll do with them. But how often do you think is like the most? Is it once a week? Is it 3 times a week? Like, what have you kind of learned about the pacing of working with them while they're also like, are you just doing it in the summer? Or are you doing it throughout the year? Like, how do you kind of work with that?
Yeah. So I'm doing
It
it
will be
throughout.
different per kid, but
Yeah,
sorry, go
yeah.
ahead.
No, no, it's all good. So I am doing it throughout the year, and then I guess if they're wanting to kind of extend it in the summer, then I do give that option. And I guess like during that consultation, I am very transparent about my pricing and what I recommend. I also like I'm very open with the family and encourage them to be open with me. I uh, education and teaching is something I'm passionate about as well, and helping. So if they come up with a plan that works better for them, that's not necessarily in the same, like, isn't my set price. It's something that I'm always open to talking about and figuring out what does work for the family. So I always recommend we start with once a week sessions just to see, so I can get a feel, so the student gets a feel, we can kind of connect a little bit. I do focus on connection really for that first 2 weeks, building trust as well. I don't want to overwhelm the students, especially if they're at school. I offer flexible times, so evenings or weekends, whatever works best. I typically do like a 60-minute session, but I also give the option if you want to space it out, do 30 minutes Monday, 30 minutes Friday, that's totally fine. Or if you want to do, 30 minutes on call with me and then 30 minutes of asynchronous work, that's also fine. I really just want to, like I said, meet them where they're at. So if they're not feeling it that day, maybe they had 2 unit tests at school, or, I can always provide that, asynchronous work that they can do, and then we can discuss next session.
Mhm.
I usually recommend that they start with booking one session per week for 3 weeks. So we see how it goes. And then the parents and I will check in again and kind of go from there. I get feedback from them and they get feedback from me, and we kind of figure out the plan as we go.
Do you usually have parents sitting in with you, like for the first session, or?
Some have and some haven't. I would say more often they don't. I guess because they have already kind of chatted through everything in that first consult. I mean, they could be behind the camera. That's always, but I think that, yeah, it's always up to the parent. I'm always very open about it. If they want to sit in on the session and maybe do some learning themselves, then for sure. But yeah, it's been going well. So
That's cool. Yeah, because I guess I just kind of wonder. It is a lot to balance, like with for any teacher to kind of, and I guess, have you gotten any like backlash for, like, I know, for example, if I taught at FMPSD or even in my current district, like if you tutor kids in your own district, it can be like frowned upon. And I guess you do a lot of online stuff as well,
yeah,
mostly.
Yeah, so it's all online right now since I am traveling.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what? I'm thinking back, I'm having a flashback to like a certain email that was sent out and it was like maybe frowning upon, but I can't remember if it was directed
Yeah.
at teachers or
Yeah.
educational assistants. I think that you're not allowed to tutor your own students as a teacher.
Yeah, like, to me, I think
Um,
if a kid's from another high school and I'm willing to, I guess, like, sell my time for an hour, like, that's a separate thing, like, just because I'm also doing the same thing at school with my own students, like,
yeah,
that's what I'm doing during the day, but if I'm like, it's not like I'm not helping you during the day and I'm saying, "No, give me, like, $50 this evening and I'll come to your house and tutor you." That's not at all what's happening, so I don't see any issue with it
yeah,
whatsoever. If someone's looking to use their own money for additional support, that's a
yeah.
service that you can provide, so it doesn't have to be weird, but
Yeah, I haven't received any backlash. I mean, I haven't been back physically to work since,
mhm,
but
yeah.
I will be going back soon, so maybe I'll hear. But again, as a TOC as well, I'm pretty sure I'm safe.
Yeah, I think you'd be in the clear anyway, but I'm just wondering, like, how that relationship could potentially grow as you kind of go into contracts in the future, but and is there, like, a certain platform you're using for this, or is it just kind of booked through your own like, do you use, like, for example, there's a website that I applied for and that I'm not partnering with, but I'm potentially offering tutoring services on called Gene.
Okay.
And, like, I have no affiliation with them right now, and, like, I've been talking to them because I think they're starting it's like a Canadian teachers thing. Like, and
Yeah.
I'll put in slots from, like 7 to 10 p.m. on a couple nights a week that I could be doing some stuff. But, like, does it make more sense to do it through your own channel and, like, receive payment through PayPal? Like, I guess how much have you kind of weighed the different considerations of, like, associating yourself with a platform? Or is it all just like, do you do it through, like, if you don't mind me asking, is it like e-transfer? Is it PayPal? Like, how do you kind of figure out that side of it?
Right. Yeah, no, I don't mind at all. I'm currently using cal.com, so that is like a calendar, I guess, but it also provides
Oh, okay, yeah.
an option, and then that is linked
Hmm.
to, I'm forgetting the name of the app, to be honest. It's not PayPal though.
Is it, start with an S?
I
It's
think so,
like
yes.
Stripe,
Right, right, right.
Stripe, yeah, yeah, okay, yes, okay.
I should know these
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
Yeah, so payment is nice because all of my like scheduling and the payment is all in one.
Mhm.
It's easier to keep track of. Um, yeah, and then of course it's the video service as well. So the call is managed there, like the scheduling. They can message me, and then also the payment. So it works out really well. I haven't had any problems with it, and I do have my website that I just created myself. I'm not sure if you're familiar with V0.
Weird, no?
Okay, so it's an awesome website. I would recommend if you're looking to create your own website. Yeah, V0.
I have one with Buzzsprout for the podcast here, and it's a pretty, like, nuts and bolts one that they just put on to kind of that you can share out.
Right.
But I've tried to do some website designing in my it hasn't gone well. So I will try V0 to, potentially expand that services part, but 'cause I was even wondering too, because this is kind of to I think I put this on, like, the earlier notes, but I haven't touched on it yet, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are of I do think that one of the missing links for teachers specifically in the preparation process is like even when you're with your mentor teacher, you're almost kind of scared to ask a stupid question because you're like, is this person going to judge me? Now I have to spend 8 more weeks or 7 more weeks with them.
Yeah.
I've thought about starting like even this could be something for even you to pursue of like practicum consultants where you're kind of with them as an evening mentor, you're impartial, you can help them plan. And I thought about like you could kind of do it contracting through like the university itself as a service for the university to offer, not like you actually charging a university student for even more while they're in university. So I thought about a few different ways and like tell me what you're teaching, tell me what your curriculum is. I'll try to help you find resources, help you develop things, talking about your class, and you could do like cohorts. And I also think that another thing that I missed going from Edmonton to Fort Mac is like you're in this group of like 20 people in person and you great relationships with your peers and then you go away.
Yeah.
Versus I think if you had like a weekly check-in with like 3 or 4 of them, through the university. I think that I just think it could be a cool way for certified teachers to continue to use their expertise. That's like, it's not ways of just bumping everyone's salary, but if they choose to do so, it's not just tutoring kids and curriculum, it's actually working as like a non-professor but active teacher consultant. So I guess, like, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that would be like, I think that would have been a valuable service to have when I was in my practicum. Like, I'm struggling heavy with this. I don't want to tell my mentor because they're scary. Not that that was the case, but like,
Yeah.
for the people that are having a rough go of it, like, how do I go about them, like my horrible mentor teacher and like an admin that won't listen to me? Like, how do you kind of like, do you think that would have been of benefit to you?
No, for sure. I think that's an amazing idea. And I can appreciate how you're really thinking outside of the box there, because it's not necessarily like, because a lot of the times the university kind of supplies, I forget what it's called, but they kind of supply you maybe a teacher in retirement to kind of check in with your
Yeah,
cohort.
yeah, yeah. Even then, it's like, you've been there, done this. Like, this is a little bit too scary still.
Exactly, exactly. And I find that a lot, it was just inconsistent, I guess. Like everybody I talked to kind of had a different experience with those people's support. And I think that that could really, really be useful for a lot of teachers looking to help in that way. It's interesting. My dad actually, he just started a little business venture of his own, and he's calling it Apprenticeship Builder. And basically, what he's doing is he is like contracting out to like universities and different companies, like careers, and is offering kind of that mentorship to apprentices that, yeah, super cool, that maybe haven't finished their trade, are new to Canada, or are in high school and looking to go into the trades. And he's kind of starting up a program to really facilitate that success. And that's actually what your idea kind of made me think of. I think that people in these transitional periods in their lives and like wanting to better themselves and wanting to educate themselves are looking for all the support that they can get, and they want that consistent strong support from people that have been through the situation themselves, can really empathize and want results for them. So I think that yeah, that's an amazing idea. And I think that like I would even be interested in doing that with Hailey Teaches. Why not expand?
Well, 100%. Because like, I don't, again, I haven't pursued this, but I do have the email made. I will say that I've kind of but again, I need to make a website, so I don't know how to do that. So I think that's maybe the next step for where this goes. But and it can be a lot to just be like, okay, here, new student teacher, start your practicum. Now we're gonna give you this random guy from New Brunswick who's gonna talk to you once a week. Like, that can be a lot too. But it's also just, if it was like an opt-in potential service as something they could offer,
Yeah.
I think it could definitely, because I just think about like, if I could choose a teacher that I could talk to once a week or even like twice a week, one week, but I don't talk to them for a month, like having that as a potential extra option could be cool, especially if it was already just like baked into my tuition that I'm already paying. Like, if there's something that
Exactly.
like universities could always do. And also, universities now, they don't have to pay that retired person. They don't have to make your very busy professor who take away from their research to answer your emails. They kind of have a person on the inside to help. But I think there's benefit all around. But so I know we're kind of gearing up on an hour here. I just have a few more questions for you, if you don't mind.
Nope. At all.
And I would say I don't really have an answer for this question myself. And maybe we've even already touched on it, but what is a tension you constantly wrestle with in education? I heard this question the other day, and I'm like, it feels so scarily open ended. But I guess, like, what comes to mind when you hear that?
Definitely the photocopier. I wrestle with the copier every day of my teaching career, physically, emotionally.
No, I sorry, go on.
I know what you mean, but that's so funny when you said wrestling. I was like, yeah, I physically have wrestled
Yeah,
with
that
it.
thing, and it takes me out every time. Actually, Kate Gadzala, bless her heart, she, I said to her, I'm like, honestly, I walked into her class. It was Social 30-1. I was like, you know what? This whole course is about like individualism and whatever,
Yeah.
collectivism and the Cold War. I'm like, this is my bread and butter. This is all I wanted to do in university. It's all I read about. I'm not worried about the teaching the content part. I was like, I'm actually most stressed about just making copies. I don't know how to use that copier downstairs, and it's so massive and intimidating. I'm like, it runs out of ink. Like, I don't know what's happening here. And she's like, no, it's super easy. Don't worry about it. But I won, and that kind of gets back to your point, but like the littlest thing, like to me, that was my Everest. Like
Yeah.
to me, seeing that photocopier every day, I'm like I don't know, what am I gonna do if someone asks me to make a
30 minutes
copy?
is my
I don't
first.
know what I'm gonna do. I don't know what I'm gonna do, especially those 60-minute preps for junior high. Like that goes by very quickly.
Very.
Fingerprinting anything, like that was such a like I would actually like find ways to avoid it. Like, no, we're just gonna post this online today. Like, it doesn't really matter. So it's kind of my embarrassing initial teacher confession. But I guess like is there anything else that you wrestle with, or is it just the photocopier?
Yeah, no. Shout out all the veteran teachers that are always,
Yes, I know.
need to
Thank you.
help with the
Yeah.
photocopier. But like if I'm thinking about that question on a more, serious note,
It doesn't have to be that serious. Don't worry.
like I mentioned to you before we connected here, like I was really interested in spreading awareness about like mental health and terms and in the domain of education and the mental health of teachers and stuff and how that impacts our education system. I think that something that I'm constantly like wrestling with, like you said, is like what we and the general we being maybe society like says about valuing teachers and then how they're actually treated and perceived and talked about. I think like there is like a record number amount of teachers on like stress related leaves and mental health related leaves and like I just I'm sure
Violence in the classroom and literally being injured and hit by a student. Yeah.
Yep. And it's so disappointing that, then that teacher has to sit with themselves and, they're still going to blame themselves for it. I think that teachers, I don't know if it's kind of it's the way that, it's certain personality trait you have as a teacher, but it's like you're still going to be beating yourself up. And I don't know that's a universal experience, but it also kind of begs the question of maybe there's something in the system that is kind of adding up to make teachers put that blame back on themselves. And there's so many TV sessions about mental health and there's things dedicated to it, but it almost feels performative, like hot take.
Like here's what's the God, I hear it so many times. How do I not know the Bloom's hierarchy of needs? Is it
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
That's the one. Okay, yeah. You're like, you're in survival mode. It's like, yeah, we know, but like this I've seen this like 80 times. Like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah,
But
and the blame
yeah.
isn't put on one specific group of people or school leadership. No, it's definitely a systematic issue, and it's like it's a trickle down effect. I'm trying to figure out kind of where the solution lies if there is one, but I think that if we say that we're valuing teachers and everything that they're putting into the profession and we say that, your mental health matters, there also needs to be definitive action taken to really, I always tell my students, actions speak louder than words. And maybe, if you called your friend like a silly something, they say, oh, that hurt my feelings. And you say, well, you didn't mean to hurt your feelings. Maybe you didn't mean for that to happen, but that was the result of your action. So, yeah, I guess
No.
it's definitely something you could get into, but yeah, I guess that's.
Now, to quote another former McTavish legend, Conrad Drover, he said to me one time, I don't know why this like burned in my memory. He's like, sometimes I feel like I'm robbing society, and sometimes I feel like society is robbing me. And that's like, you cannot capture that feeling in any more concise group of words than that. But I think like, but the teachers, whenever anyone in the public talks about teaching, they only focus on like how we're because again, Sundays are fun. Sundays it's like a spirit day. Like you're playing games. Like it's Friday. You're watching. Like sometimes you'll watch a movie. It's a good day. Like the kids are working. You're having fun. And some
Yeah.
days you're like, oh my god, like what happened? But I think people almost focus too. I think they think that the good days are like 75-25, when in reality it's probably the inverse. Like most days are probably pretty good, but a lot of days are very like you're just slogging through trying to get it done. But I think that's a disconnect potentially. And so if this is one of my favorite questions. If you could throw out one piece of educational jargon forever, what would it be and why?
That's a good one.
I just think of acronyms just come to mind. I don't even have one
Yeah,
that comes
there's
to mind, but
about
just
like
the
the ones
word
that
acronyms. But
pasted around. I don't know. You know yeah, you know the classrooms that are like all the it's like I'm trying to figure out these acronyms. One time I went into a classroom, this is kind of off topic, but it was all like Taylor Swift acronyms. Like I
yeah.
didn't.
Oh,
So
I
yeah,
kind of want that for my room though, just to like mess people's heads. But yeah,
right? Yeah, the students got a kick out of it. But I don't know if this counts as jargon, but there's something that like is really going around right now, and I find the conversations and the spaces that I'm in, and it's like in terms of like ADHD and autism and
mm-hmm.
the spectrum, right? There's a low functioning and then high functioning.
Yeah.
And I think like those terms are so outdated and actually I think harmful towards a lot of people, because if you're labeling a student as high functioning, you're writing off, like you just have to have some kind of like preconception, right? And then maybe you're labeling a student as low functioning, and then you're actually not even giving them the opportunity to
Yeah.
thrive.
It can be
It's
used to dismiss, I think.
Yes, no, for sure. I don't know. I think that, like, especially with high functioning too, students who are labeled that way don't end up getting the help that they need. And I think that there's a lot of labels like that in the education world that definitely need some reconsideration. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the two that come to mind for me, I was just thinking about these, they just popped in my head. Like the one I always hated, and it makes me sound so cheesy when I say it. And if any of my friends heard me, they would just make fun of me. Like people would say, like, don't reinvent the wheel, like all the time. Like that's always something I heard. And I get it. And I
Yeah.
get it. And like I totally, but then I didn't want to tell you. But I said to someone, I was like, well, what if I want to fly? What if I don't want to actually drive? You know what I mean? It makes me sound like so cheesy. Like, what if someone said that to the Wright brothers? Like, don't reinvent the wheel. It's like, well, I'm not. I'm actually doing something different. So that's
Absolutely
kind of
love
what
it.
yeah, well, it's like it just makes it feel like, no, just slog through your days and use it on the Google Drive, man. It's like I get that. Some weeks, some days, I did that absolutely. But I think if you lose your creative spirit, you'll hate teaching. And I think,
Yeah,
um,
100%.
yeah,
Wow.
and the other one I think is like teachers don't do it for the income; they do it for the outcome. And I'm like, okay, that's cool, but I want to pay my mortgage and have a vehicle that doesn't break down too. Like that's not really that like weird of a concept, but I don't know. I think
Yeah.
those are the two that pop into my mind. But I appreciate you not just calling me nerdy for the flying remark.
No, I think I get told that. I think especially as a beginning teacher too, you get told that a lot. And yes,
And it comes
agree.
from a good place. It comes from a
Exactly.
good place of like, don't burn yourself out. I think that's what it really is. Like a lot of this thinking has been done for you. We've all been there.
Mhm.
Don't
And
kill yourself over like
teachers.
yes, yeah, and like I remember there was even one teacher like when I first started, who was like a couple of years in, and she was like writing her own worksheets from scratch all the time, and I'm like, okay, like there's things in the drive you can, you know what I mean, like you can use or edit or like adjust kind of how you want to use it. Like you don't have to spend 2 hours writing like making sure everything's centered and everything. It's like no, like that stuff doesn't need to necessarily be there. So the last two questions I have for you is every podcast I end the same way. And it's two cheesy quotes that don't worry, I won't add anything onto. I just want to hear your take on them. The first one is you've clearly had some initiative. You're putting yourself out there. Obviously, agreeing to be on a podcast is not an easy feat. You're kind of putting yourself, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what crazy person's going to be on the other end talking about his cheesiness. And so the quote is do not let school get in the way of your education. So, what are some things that you feel like you've learned that have helped you become successful in what it is you're trying to pursue that you would not necessarily have learned in a classroom?
That's a good question. that I haven't necessarily learned in the classroom. I think a lot of the time, like when I was teaching every day, I would take a lot of it home with me. I would be kind of spiraling, and I would, be out with friends, or I would be at a yoga class, or, doing something for myself, and I still wouldn't be able to kind of leave work in a sense. And it really, really, really started to impact my mental health, my physical health. And, I think I learned the most about teaching by taking a step back from teaching and removing myself from the classroom, when it got to be too much. It was difficult having to make a decision, to put myself first. But and I was miserable. It's not the decision that I wanted to make at the time.
Mhm.
I ended up learning that, like, can't if you can't separate these things, and you can't stop your mind from racing all the time, like even when you're outside of the classroom, then you're not going to be able to help that inside of the classroom either. So I think that I've taken a break, like a forced break sometimes from teaching, and like taking the time that you really need to reset those like negative kind of ruts that you got yourself into is necessary. And that's kind of where you're going to learn, what you need to be a successful teacher, a more like a happier teacher, is really kind of just listening to yourself and what you need outside of the classroom as well.
Yeah, 'cause I've even noticed for myself, like I haven't taken like I've just like changed into a middle school now here in New Brunswick,
Mhm.
and like there's nothing ever in the evening. Like practices are over by 4 p.m. And like I'm not going to Edmonton for 2 weeks a year to mark provincial exams, and I'm not teaching summer school, and it's like okay, like there's more to it's like oh to my wife I'm like oh hey like I remember you like we've been together for 9 years and that's probably the most I've seen her is this year and I'm like
Wow.
okay like this is hey like we still live together that's good but anyway it has been like very different trying to learn that like you don't have to pour every ounce of every day into this even though it can be like weirdly addicting because you feel like you're contributing. I think that's
Yeah.
something you need to discover for yourself that you still can be a solid contributor.
Yeah.
That again, and I understand like the new teacher urge to just go all in. I've been there. I would almost still kind of encourage it. Like I always kind of said, like you find out like what teacher you're not, like by trying a lot of different things, and that way you can kind of figure out kind of who you want to be rather than like whatever teacher you are. That's great. Okay, so I got one more quote for you,
Yes.
kind of on a similar line, and it is education is what remains once one forgets everything that they learned in school. So, what is it that you want your students to take away from their time with you that they won't get anywhere else?
I think the unique kind of experience and perspective that I have as a substitute teacher is, sometimes I'm working contracts, and like mostly this year, it's been 2 months at a time or so. And, these students are aware that this time with me is fleeting. And so I always try to say, you know what, like, I'm not your classroom teacher that started out here in September, and I might not be the classroom teacher that ends here in June, but like I'm going to show up for you each day. I am going to try my best to, you know, do everything I have to do that your classroom teacher would do. But also, I can have a little bit of fun with you. We can get to know each other, and if your classroom teacher is out, and maybe you've had a lot of different substitute teachers, like I'm going to be consistent for you, and I will teach you maybe in a different perspective, and maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't like it, but I'm going to do my best, and I hope that you do your best. And I really had a wonderful experience in all the classes that I've taught in this year. And even if it was for a short amount of time, it's like the classes that really taught me the most about teaching and really made me feel like, I am capable of teaching, and maybe this profession is right for me, after some hurdles. So Yeah, I think that kind of sums it up. Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, Hailey Chisholm, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Lucas. It really was a pleasure.